Welcome to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast with your host, legendary powerlifter and strength athlete, Chad Ikes. For most, the journey of strength starts in the gym, but should inevitably expand through all aspects of life. Join us as we discuss all things strength. Now, here's your host, Chad Ikes.
Hey guys, today I am back with J.M. Blakely, who's probably one of my favorite guests just because I love the way he approaches lifting and he's so mental about it. I'm not by any means going to say I was the smartest lifter ever, but I did always try to increase my knowledge and I wanted my brain to be stronger than my body. And I don't know if that was my phone that just made that noise or not, but anyway. So I just got JM on and I was brought a quick subject up and I'm like, hold on, we gotta start recording because this is a good topic already. And what I ask him is if he thinks that as we're both getting older now, if some of what we did in training is going to cause some stuff older, or basically how, like, can you compete at the highest level and not have something come up later in life is basically my question.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to look at it. Is can I do this and then have that? Which I don't think most. I apologize. That may happen again, Chad. That's when my phone wants me to answer the phone.
No problem.
I don't think that most top athletes really do a good job of weighing that out. I think that the question is, for most top athletes, what do I have to do right now? What sacrifices do I have to make? What work needs to be done? What price needs to be paid right now to get me from fifth to fourth, from fourth to third, from third to first? It's not necessarily a consideration that I know that I certainly didn't make that I didn't have that clarity about it. My clarity was on the goal, and anything that would happen after the goal wasn't part of the process of factoring whether I should or shouldn't do the next thing. Should I make a sacrifice? Should I change jobs? Should I move? Those were all questions. Should I stay in this relationship? Those were all questions. Should I put my body through this and this and this? All of those questions were asked, but they weren't asked in relationship to what happens after I reach the goal. Mm-hmm. They were only asked in relationship to the goal and not to anything around the goal. So I think a lot of young athletes and up-and-coming athletes and athletes that are approaching their full potential don't put much consideration into what happens after I reach the goal. What happens after I get the gold medal? What happens after I set the record? What happens after I achieve the things I wanted to achieve? The prevailing attitude, I think, is I will do what it takes to get what I want. And then I'll deal with whatever happens after that point. And I don't think that that's necessarily something that we should strive to force down athletes' throats. I don't think it's in our human nature to be extremely good at looking forward. That's a prefrontal lobe thing. The better your prefrontal lobes are, the more dominoes you can see knock over other dominoes. Pursuing a level of excellence in sport or in anything, I guess, any goal that is really excellent, it sort of puts those blinders on you. It sort of makes you get that tunnel vision type of thing going where The mission is what's important. And the people, they're not nearly as important as the mission. Ask any Navy SEAL or anybody that's in the Special Forces or done anything like that. Each individual is, that doesn't matter. The mission matters.
Right.
And we can get into that same kind of attitude. I don't know that that's necessary, though. The question that you brought is it sort of, we can reconfigure it a little bit. Is it necessary to think like that to achieve great things? I think the answer is no. It's not necessary. It's just usual. Usually you speak to people who have accomplished something extraordinary, and they'll talk like that. They'll talk about cutting away things out of their life that were distractions and isn't it? And they talk like that with that tunnel vision.
I think in my story I was a little different because I did my high school sports, then I went and did college sports. And because of my compartment syndrome, I had to stop throwing. So I only got to throw like 2.5 or 3 years. And then I had this big spell in there where I had to deal with, oh shit, like I'm not competing. I don't have this in my life. And then I kind of found powerlifting at 27, which was like, holy shit, here's a second chance for me kind of. And so when I went through there, I kind of did have, like, one of my big thoughts was I don't want to be the person that can't let go of this at some point. Like, I don't want to be the guy at 60 years old who's still trying to break these records and just destroying myself, or the guy that quits and struggles with who am I now that I'm not a power lifter. And I tried to think about, like, you know, I want to be able to still walk and screw around at 60 years old. So, but that was one of the reasons I led down, like, the technique path and really wanting to learn technique and be good at it. But in the end, I still look back now and go, Chad, you went too hard. You pushed yourself into depression. You pushed yourself into these suicide attitudes. And I could have been better. I think I could have been better if I would have pulled back more. So now at this point in my career with training my clients and stuff, I think more about this. I think more about the long term for them. And in some ways I go, is that there's almost, I think there can be too much tunnel vision. And like, if you're a 20-year going, I don't care if I die. I'm like, I get that because I kind of had that attitude, but are you serious? Like, you could live this long, huge, healthy life, and maybe even that's going to be better for your powerlifting.
Yeah, I think that I think there's a group of people, a large group of people that almost admire that anything to win attitude. Mm-hmm. It's almost admirable. You can hear it in their voice. And then they admire people that have done that. And I think you're doing a good job of, if you're training your clients and talking to people about maybe a little bit more, a little bit larger view, expanding that view out of that tunnel vision. But a question would be then to you, since you didn't have, I experienced it, and I look back at it, and I don't think it was necessary, but that's how I did it. And I like you have chosen to try to get people to expand out of it. But a question for you is, if it had been necessary, was the goal that you were pursuing, would it have, if I had told you, Chad, you're going to have to get tunnel visioned on this if you want this goal, if I had been coaching you and I said, you're going to have to tunnel it down. The mission has to come first. A good question to ask ourselves, and you don't have to answer me this, but people have to deal with it themselves. Would you become tunnel visioned and say, to hell with the 60 years, to hell with how I'm going to have to walk around when I'm 60. I want this thing now so bad that I'm willing to make that sacrifice. And that's an absolutely personal decision. But I think kids, young people don't consider it seriously enough. Like you had a serious consideration and it dawned on you and you worked with the idea, what am I going to be like when I'm older? Now, I did too. And I made the choice. I said, well, if that's how it has to be, I'm going to have to be okay with it. And I am okay with it. But I don't think that people really, really count the cost. They just want the candy, and they want the candy now. And they don't do their due diligence of going, okay, I'm still going to get the candy. And even if it costs me in the future, I still want the candy. But they didn't really think about the cost. And then when they get there, that's when we hear this.
Yeah.
Right? That's when we hear, I wish I wouldn't, I shouldn't have, I would. But so I think the only thing we can do as coaches is to try to encourage people to think more about what are you going to do after you win? Let's say you win. Now what? Mm-hmm. I think that's a very good question. And that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think even if you have younger lifters or younger people, I mean, we definitely, hopefully as we age, we see the world differently. And a lot of young people don't think as much as they do when they're older. And I think just to give them the option to go, hey, maybe that all in tunnel aspect isn't the best. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying maybe it's not. So try to think about that too.
Yeah. Sun Tzu has a thing in The Art of War where he says, basically, if you can survive the worst possible outcome of this attack that you're planning this goal, you're planning to do this thing. And if on the other side of it, if everything goes wrong, if the worst possible thing happens, if you can survive, then you can still attack. Mm-hmm. But if you can imagine your plan all going to shit and everything going wrong, and that destroys your army and you can't fight anymore, then you have to retreat or you have to wait to attack. So everybody plans that everything's going to go their way. When I plan out a goal, I see myself reaching it and everything goes right, but nothing ever goes all right. So a good thing to do is plan for the worst case scenario. And Sun Tzu says, if you can survive the worst case, then you can attack. You can take that risk. If you cannot, if you can imagine a situation where it would destroy you, that it would be untenable, that you wouldn't be, it would be unsatisfactory, then you shouldn't. You should wait till you get stronger. You should wait for a more opportune time. You should even retreat. So I think that's good advice for guys in this situation that we're talking about. If you want to go ahead and do it, it's a risk. But know what you're risking and imagine the worst thing that could happen to you. Mm-hmm. Imagine a pec tear. Imagine your life with the worst thing. And if you're okay with that, then you can take the risk.
Right.
But if you're like, well, as long as I don't tear a pec, I'll be fine. I can live with it. Well, you might tear a pec. So you probably should think a little harder about whether you want to take this risk or not. Mm-hmm. I think his advice is really good. And I use it a lot, actually, when I'm thinking about things. We all, and I'm an optimist, right? And I think coaches should be optimists. And we should always imagine our best outcome. But a really good general in the Art of War, a really good leader, a really good coach, and a really good athlete who's taking care of themselves is going to ask that question. What happens if the worst I can imagine were to come true? If I can still live to fight another day, or if I'm still going to be okay with that, I'll be like, yeah, I took this risk and, I totally wiped out. But I'm okay with it because it was my life. Then you're okay. You can go right ahead and do it.
Right.
But if you're going to be one of these guys that's like, I tore a pec and this and that, or I know a lot of guys that played college ball and they just about went pro except for an injury. they had an injury. If it wasn't for this injury, I would have went pro. And that's a never-ending burden that they carry around on them all the time, right?
Right.
And so if you can handle the worst and still be okay with yourself and with your choices, then Sun Tzu says, go ahead and take the risk. And hopefully it won't be the worst. Hopefully your plan will work out. But if you can't, then you shouldn't. You should retreat. You should strengthen your army. You should look for another time. And I think that's pretty good advice for up-and-coming powerlifters. If you can handle those things, go ahead.
It sounds like really good advice to me. And it kind of goes too, I think too, with like broadening that tunnel vision just a little bit to see the bigger picture, to go, okay, here's how it's going to affect everything. How far am I willing to go to do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're just thinking about the meet, it's really easy to go, I'm going to do whatever it takes at this meet. But you're thinking about one small battle in a whole lifetime.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've heard you say a couple of times, and it really it keeps ringing in my ears, kind of, is you talk about people training happy. Like if you're happier, you're going to train better. And I'm kind of in between on that, because when I competed, I actually used a lot of my anger, but then I would pull back before the lift. So I was thinking of what I was doing, but I would use my anger to get my adrenaline up. But then I go back and go, well, wait a minute, I didn't do that every day. Like my regular training, like I enjoyed my training. And I actually caught a old video of Tom Platz the other day. And he was talking about how, he goes, I didn't really train on a schedule. I trained more on how I felt. And if I got up and I didn't feel like I was going to train well that day, he goes, I wouldn't train that day. I would go for a bike ride, or I would go to the beach, or I would go talk to Weeder or something else. And I thought, I really like that concept. And people should train happy.
Yeah, you should. If you can. Now, if you can't, you have to do it some other way. So there's a hierarchy of choices. And if you have a whole bunch of tools in your toolbox, you can fine tune the choice. Sometimes I just recently have started to try to learn how to do things mechanical. And I realized finally that there are different sizes of Phillips head screwdriver. There's a P1, P2, and a P3. And I never knew that. So I would get a Phillips head screwdriver and I would try to put that into every Phillips head screw. Sometimes it would work better than others, right? But if you only have one Phillips head screwdriver, you have to use that.
Right.
And it will drive most, but it's not the best fit for the job. And it's not the most efficient. It's not we don't want to say right or wrong, but it's not the best way you could do it. You could look at the size of the screw and you could get the P1, P2, or P3. Mm-hmm. Fit it real well. And same thing with the slotted one. Sometimes I've had to put a very small slotted screwdriver into a big slot, right? And it doesn't work as well. So if you don't have a whole bunch of tools, you got to do you got to do your best with what you have. Mm-hmm. But the best tool for the job, in my opinion, is to train happy. That's the best way to train. And if you have ever had the opportunity to compare training, and I always use this as an example. If you're in love, or if you're in a brand new relationship where everything is just going great, I mean, you feel like you have a boundless energy.
Yes.
It really is amazing. You never get tired when you just start a new relationship and you're in love and you're really, really happy. And you can still train miserable. And I've done it. You have to. Sometimes things go really, really bad. I've had to come into one of the biggest meets of my life, and my wife had just told me she was going to leave me. Now that's tough, right? That's okay. So I don't have the perfect fit in the screwdriver for the screw, but I'm still going to show up and I'm going to do it. But I think the best tool for training at your best is happiness. And that is something that is outside of the gym. You make yourself happy outside of the gym, and you bring that happiness into the gym with you. It's not something you do in the gym. You're not really making yourself happy in the gym. You're doing work. But if you can make yourself happy outside the gym, then you can, if you want to, bring that happiness in. And I believe it's a superior tool to other forms of motivation. And I'm not the only one. Sun Tzu, again, I'll read him again. He talks about the folly of attacking with vengeance or anger, and how many mistakes you might make in that mindset, as opposed to a clear-headedness and a joy. And I'm not saying that those aren't tools too. I'm just, in my opinion, they're not the best tool. And people have used them very well. But amount of energy that it takes to train mad, or to that takes more of you than it does to train happy. If you can make yourself happy outside the gym, it's like free energy that you don't have to come up with. If you're upset, you're mad, and you're using that, you got to bring that energy that isn't there. You got to generate it, and that's hard, but it can be done. But it's not better than having extra energy just falling off of you everywhere. It's not better than that. The best you can do is come in with a full heart, a clear mind, and just, man, things feel super light. They feel like you could do anything.
That's interesting.
If you have that, if you don't have it, and I've trained a lot not having it, right? Not having that joy. That's why but I have had it too. So I've had the comparison. I had to come up with all that. And I did. And men that want something bad enough do. You bring yourself through the anger, or through the whatever's there that is taking energy. And anger doesn't give anybody energy. It takes energy. You pay into that. You're feeding that. That's not feeding you. That's a misconception, I think. People think I'm going to get mad and I'm going to get all this energy from it. No, that's your energy that you're getting past, and you're getting through the anger. But joy gives you energy. Joy is free. It's just a difference of the direction of the energy. Anger steals energy from us. We're upset. We're mad. I want to fuck that guy up. I want to, excuse my language. I'm gonna, or I'm attacking the bar, and that's energy going away from you. That's pouring out of you. Joy and happiness is energy that just is coming into you. And it comes not from the gym, and it comes not from yourself. It comes from your life. So if you do a good job, this is my opinion, if you do a good job or a better job, if you just improve a little bit of making your life a little happier, that's energy that comes into the gym that you don't have to bring out of yourself. I can admire guys that train with the rage, because they're doing something that's harder than doing it the other way. They've got to bring extra. But what I know about those guys, or believe about those guys, is that they would have lifted more and done better if they hadn't had to waste so much of their own emotional and spiritual energy on that anger. That anger is like it's like a hole that's leaking energy out. It's just, and they have to overcome that, and they do. And I've seen guys do it, and there's an admiration to that too, to having that much inside of you that you can overcome this leakage of energy and still do all right. But if we do better planning, and if we take care of other things in our life, we don't have that leakage. We have something else. We're hooked up to an input that is just swelling us up with a lot of useful energy that then I can direct it anywhere I want to. And so that's how I feel about that. I think it's really important to, and I teach it. I really do. I really teach not only happiness, but rejuvenation. Rejuvenation is one of my core tenets of recovery. So I got 6, and rejuvenation is the newest one that just finally, in the last 4 or 5 years, has become. I used to only have 5, but now I got 6. I got this extra one. So rest, sleep, which are different things, nutrition, stress reduction, getting rid of stress, and now this rejuvenation, and then the rest of your life, which means balancing all these things in your life that pull you in different directions. But the rejuvenation and the happiness thing tie in to this discussion that we're having. In this way, if you can find something on a regular basis, not just once in a while, but on a regular basis as part of your recovery plan that helps you recharge, that helps you refuel, that helps you replenish, and then anything. Renew, replenish, refuel, re-energize, anything. Puts back what you are giving out in the gym. I mean, if you train properly, you're putting out physical energy. Mm-hmm. You're putting out mental energy because you got big weights on there and you got to get up for that. And if you give a shit about your life and you really pour your emotions into it too, all those things get depleted. Your body, your mind, and your spirit, your emotions. If you're passionate about your training, you leave the gym flat as hell. Now, I call that sometimes a pleasant fatigue, but you're flat emotionally. And if you've ever been in a relationship and tried to do something after training, like go to a picnic or a family gathering or something, good luck. Because your partner is going to tell you how emotionally flat and useless you are to them at that point. If you're training not properly, but if you're training at a very high level, you're giving it those 3 things, and they get depleted. Now, you put the energy back into the body, you do things for the mind, but what are you doing on a regular basis to rejuvenate your spirit? What do you plan to do every week or several times a week, or at least some regular cycle of I get back? When I do this thing, when I take an activity, verb, I do something. And when I do this, man, I feel bigger instead of smaller. Like I go fishing. All right, I get out there and I go fishing. And when I get home from fishing, I feel like I'm more than I was before I did all that fishing. Or smoking a cigar. I like to smoke cigars. And I feel better after doing that. I feel like I'm more, not less, by doing the thing. And it could be a walk in the park. You can see it that I have cats. I spend a lot of time with my cats. And that rejuvenates me. I pay attention to them. I didn't hear, but I do. And that makes me feel bigger for spending that energy. Yeah, you're spending energy. You're doing something. But somehow there are certain activities that for everybody, and they're different for everybody, they make you feel emotionally powered up so that the next workout that you're going to do, you got a full charge. You're not driving to the gym going, oh man, this is going to be hard. I'm dreading this. How am I ever going to get through that last set today? I know what I got to do. I know my numbers. My God, holy cow, how am I going to do this? And you're almost dreading it. If you do something about this happiness rejuvenation thing, You're looking at the clock. Okay, 4 hours till I get to train. Oh man. All right, 3 hours, 2 hours, 1 hour. Oh, it's time to go. I can't wait to get my hands on that bar today. That's a guy who is happy, and that's a guy who is rejuvenated. And if you don't have anything in your life that is part of your plan, now you don't have to write it down, but I tell my people too in the beginning, what are your things that you're going to do this week to rejuvenate from this workout we just did? That was a great workout. You did great. What are you going to do this week to rejuvenate? Not just what are you going to eat? How are you going to improve your sleep? What are you going to do to stress release? How are you going to do your meditation? No, what are you going to tell me right now as your plan to recover, as your plan to put back some of that emotion that you just left all over the gym floor because you spent it? What are you doing there? And it's kind of silly, but you could really do anything. It's super personal. Like for me, it's petting cats and reading books and smoking cigars and tending my flower beds. That's me, right? For some people, it might be going dancing with your wife. Yeah, that spends energy, but you might get more from that. Maybe it's cooking a dinner for your wife, or maybe it's having dinner with your wife, or it doesn't matter what the thing is. It could be painting. It could be playing guitar or playing an instrument. It could be anything that you feel bigger after having done it. That's what I would probably call a rejuvenating thing. And so that ties into that being happy. We can do
one of the with suffering from depression and anybody who's actually felt down, and then you have to go a job or you have to go to a party where you have to feel up and you have to feel like you have energy, and how draining that is afterwards and how exhausted you are after that. I kind of see that as the same thing. And if you go into the gym, and I've done this because of my sleep and stuff, I'll start getting myself pumped up on the way to the gym. And then I'll get pumped up in the gym. And all I've done is I've just taxed the shit out of my endocrine system. So my recovery is going to be that much harder. And it's just like you said, like all that energy, you expended way more energy than you have to get that good train in. And then you're drained for your energy. Now, what are you actually going to do outside the gym to replenish that? And it sounds like a lot of stuff you were talking about. I've been researching recently about, getting the mind and the body, the emotions of the body and the thoughts of the mind equal through meditation and stuff, where you can actually, if you want to say, reach into the quantum field and get energy from the quantum field. And like everything that you said to me, in some ways, I see that as meditation. If you're out fishing and you're just fishing and you're not listening to music, or you're there just playing with your cat and you're focused on your cat and you don't have all this other shit, that seems to me, like what you're saying about rejuvenation is a great way to say it. Like you're lining your body up again and you're getting your energy back and helping that body recover. I think one of the things I talk about, and this would be interesting to hear your standpoint on this, I think our muscles can recover quickly from training, or fairly quickly, but I think all the other systems in our body take much longer to recover. And I think that a lot of lifters forget about that. They're like, well, my muscles feel good. But what about your tendons and your ligaments? What about your central nervous system? What about your digestive system? What about your endocrine system? Your lymph system that travels everything through your body.
Yeah, that's a good point that you bring up, Chad. There was no question that my muscles were ready to go in a very short period of time. And there was also equally no question that my joints weren't. Mm-hmm. And so there was a mismatch there. The muscle recovery was way faster than the stress to the ligaments and tendons and joints. And then some people, depending on where you're at in the training, and your absolute output, not relative output. I'm not, we may or may not know this, but I'm not a fan of the percentage system. I'm not concerned with relative things. I'm concerned with absolute things. So what I mean by that is the absolute stress that someone goes under will determine how much recovery they're going to need, not their relative stress. So let's say a guy benches 300 pounds and another guy benches 400, and they go through the same percentage workout, whatever, 82% for so many reps. And they do the same thing. Who recovers first? The guy that did the 82% at 300 or the guy that did 82% at 400? Now, they have the same relative workload. But who recovers first from that? Another way to ask the question is if you and I do 3 sets of 10 dumbbell curls, and I use 20s and you use 40s, who recovers first?
I think there's a list of factors that are going to be completely different. I would think.
What do you mean?
I mean,
I'm talking about one difference, absolute load.
Like
absolute load.
One difference?
Everything else is the same. Everything else is relatively the same. But the absolute load is different. My
first thing would be the stronger guy probably has better muscular control and better.
No. Two twins. One guy's just using a heavier load. Absolute load is the major arbiter of recovery demand. It's the major arbiter. And as every year, this is what people don't think about. And this is what ties into what you said, that people don't think about these other systems. What people don't think about is everybody expects to go to the gym and be training next year with heavier weights across the board. That's why you go to the gym.
Yes.
So I was benching 300, then I'm benching 400, then I keep going to the gym, I keep doing all the right things. Now I'm benching 500. Okay. As that increased, and as that training, even if you did the same even if the same program is done, same sets, same reps, from 300 to 400 to 500. What did you do to increase the quality of your sleep? Because it's easier to recover from a 300-pound workout than a 500-pound workout. Mm-hmm. But your problem still sleeping the same. What did you do for your nutrition? Because it's harder to recover from a 500-pound training session than a 300-pound training session. As you personally get stronger, you have to improve not just your weights in the gym, which is what everybody does if they stay with it. You also should start thinking about, how am I going to improve my nutrition? How am I going to improve my rest and my recovery and my meditation and my rejuvenation and balancing the rest of my life? And if you don't, what happens is, to everybody, they hit a plateau. And I don't believe in those. They're not real. They're generated by foolishness. Somebody didn't do what they should have done. You wouldn't be at a plateau if you had said, as I increase in strength, which I expect to do, I also expect to have to pay for that with more of these recovery modalities. I expect both of them to go up, one after the other. But no, everybody's still trying to get the same amount of sleep, they're eating the same shit that they were eating when they were benching 300. But now you're benching 400. Why didn't it occur to you that you can't expect your body and its reserves to respond to a 400-pound load with the same things you were doing at a 300-pound load? And God forbid, a 500 or more pound load. Why? Where did you get the idea that you could still do the same stuff during recovery?
Do you think part of that is because, and I hear this a lot, well, I've been lifting so I can recover faster. Which is something that I completely disagree with that. Like, I think our body has a limited amount of recovery.
No, we don't have to agree or disagree. We can use science. That's just not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're saying is, here's what they're saying. Here's what they're confusing. They're confusing absolute load with relative load. People think that lifting weights makes lifting weights easier. And that's because they're talking about if I start lifting weights and I bench 100 pounds and I keep lifting weights, then pretty soon benching 100 pounds isn't as hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But what do you do in a gym? Do you keep lifting 100 pounds? No, you lift 100, 120, 150, 170, 200, 300. Lifting weights gets harder, not easier.
Right.
Lifting any beginning load gets easier, but you can't do that. You can't just say, so if a guy wants to go from benching 100 pounds to 135, he has to train with something like 85 pounds. And it's hard for him. And he trains with 85 and he starts getting stronger. And he trains with 90 and then 95 and all that, right? He can't keep training with 85 pounds year after year after year and find a way to bench press 400 pounds.
Right.
His workouts get harder, not easier. They don't, nothing in the gym. You know, you don't get stronger. So as you get stronger, you also bring the weight up with you. And so you're still struggling. It's always a struggle. It's always a struggle. Now, the thing is, it's a struggle to recover from too. But now, instead of struggling to recover from 100 or 200 pounds, your body is now struggling to recover from 300 and 400 pounds. You try to bench 300 and keep benching 300 and then one day just magically bench 500. It won't happen. You have to bring the weight up. And so I can see perhaps where people that don't want to think very hard get the idea that if I lift weights, lifting weights becomes easy. It doesn't. It doesn't. Not if you want to keep progressing. If you want to stay at that level, yes. Lifting 300 became normal and it became normalized and your body adapted to it and now it's easy. Mm-hmm. And you will stay there forever unless you do what is hard again. What got you to 300 was doing what is hard. And if you ever stop doing what is hard and you stay doing things that are easy, that is where you will remain. And that's the misconception, that I can keep doing the easy stuff that I used to do in recovery, that my recovery doesn't also become harder, because it does. And it does in lockstep. As your weights go up, which they do if you show up and work hard and try hard, then your recovery gets harder. But people don't plan for that. And that is what causes the plateau in most cases. In most cases, it's my recovery ability is here and my strength is only here. So I start marching my strength up, but my recovery ability is still way up here because I'm not very strong and I don't know how to push myself very hard yet. But every year I'm in the gym, I learn how to push myself harder and harder, and my strength keeps coming up. And I haven't done shit except take some days off. I haven't thought twice about my sleep, my nutrition, my recovery, my rest, getting massages, stretching, nothing. I just go and work out real hard. And remember, I'm way down here, and I'm working my way up. But,
so do you think
but then they equilibrate, right? Sooner or later, you haven't done anything to improve your recovery and you have improved your strength. And now you get to this point where, man, I'm coming to the gym and I'm trying to work out harder and harder, but I can't seem to grow anymore. Oh, well, I guess I'm at my genetic limit. I guess I'm done. I guess I can't. Or I got to find a different program, and I tried this program. That's not increasing your recovery. What you need to do at some point, if anybody's at a plateau that's listening to this, what you need to think about isn't your program at all. It's your recovery program, that part of your program that you have. I will bet if anybody's at a plateau, I will bet $1 American right now that they have not done anything in the last 2 years to improve their recovery.
I agree.
I'll bet that.
So basically what you're saying is like somebody comes in, they come into the gym, they can bench 100 pounds. They naturally have the ability to recover from, say somebody benching 250 pounds. So then as they get stronger, they're getting closer and closer to their recovery rate without changing anything. And eventually, once you add up and equal that recovery weight, you're not going to get any stronger because your body can't recover from what you're doing. And so then my question is, I feel like the body has a limited amount of a limited recovery ability. And I kind of use the analogy of a cut. If I cut myself and keep cutting myself, I can't get my body to heal cuts faster. It can only do it so fast. But like you're saying, a lot of times people aren't focusing on their recovery. Like, are you sleeping more? Now you've met that same, your strength and your recovery are equal. Are you sleeping more now? Is your nutrition better now? Are you focusing on all the other things we just talked about now? Yeah. And so that's why a lot of them, it's like you're only going to get as strong as your recovery ability.
Sometimes it's not sleeping more. You can add another hour, and that's useful for most people. But at some point, I'm benching 400. I add an hour of sleep, and now I'm benching 450. I add another hour of sleep. I'm benching 500. Another hour of sleep. I'm benching 550. I add another. You can't sleep all day, so you have to start getting in terms of improving the quality of your sleep, improving the quality of your nutrition, improving the quality of your meditative time, improving the quality of your rejuvenative time. Mm-hmm. You have to start thinking in terms of quality of recovery. But you're right. There's only so much reserve. There's only so much the body can do. And what happens is 400 becomes 500, becomes 600, becomes 700, becomes 800. And, how are you going to get the recovery? So then you have to start thinking in terms of what is, and this is really where it's at. What is the stimulus to growth to recovery burden ratio? What's the minimum amount of work that I can do to make myself stronger that will put a minimum amount of recovery burden on me? I want to do the least amount of work that I can possibly do to assure stimulation to grow, so that I have a chance to recover from it.
This you're right. You're running right up my alley right now. This is the more I've trained and the more am coaching people now, the more I focus on recovery. But I think one of the interesting things, and I just kind of thought about this with what you're talking about, I think people in those initial first years where they're getting stronger, but their recovery has been good, I think that's where they kind of get their brain thinking, it's just about training. It's just about training. And there becomes
Chad,
you're
absolutely right. You've hit the nail on the head. That is exactly the problem. And so at about the third year, they finally learn how to push themselves, and they finally gain enough strength to be able to finally outstrip their body's normal, everyday, ordinary recovery reserves. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be about 300, 350 pound bench, which is where everybody quits. Or not, they don't quit. They keep going to the gym. That's where everybody gets kind of to. And they get there because they have been nobody told them that as you get stronger, you're going to have to, at some point, think about taking more days in between bench press sessions. You're going to have to take more days off. That's the difference between rest and sleep. Rest deals with how much time you're not in the gym, and sleep deals with what you would think it is, being unconscious. Rest means I'm going to give myself a stimulation bout here. I'm going to work out. Now, when can I get that next one in? And when you're not very strong and you don't push yourself very hard, it's very close. But when you're really strong, moving hundreds of pounds, thousands in a workout, that gets further and further away. You got to take more and more time, more rest in between sessions. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to do that, right? Because they get the idea that I don't have to. It's all about the gym. It's all about training. It's all about sets, reps, and exercises. And it sort of is until you get to that point where you outstrip your ability to recover.
Right.
Then it's not. Then it's all. Then it's almost all. You should have learned how to push yourself, and you should have learned what your favorite exercises are. Then it's almost exactly opposite. Now it's almost all about recovery.
Right.
And nobody sees that coming, and nobody talks about that because it's not fun to talk about. Everybody wants to talk about, and I like talking about exercises. I love exercises and variations. And it's fun to talk about that. It's not fun to talk about all this other stuff.
Right.
It's not sexy. It's not exciting, but it will become the limiting factor for almost every lifter. Almost everyone. A couple guys will jump onto chemicals. A couple guys will get serious and hire a good coach. A couple guys, but that's a small amount of people. Almost everybody is going to be limited by this. I come to the gym. It's always about the gym. I don't even have to think about sleeping. I don't even have to. And 30-year-olds, man, I say this all the time too. 30-year-olds, 20 and 30-year-olds, man, life is exciting. Life is awesome. There's so much to do, so much to see. There's so many distractions, right? And so the first thing they give up is an hour of sleep. Mm-hmm. They stay up late with their girlfriend, fooling around, or they go out drinking and they stay out an extra hour, drink, or they're with their buddies, or at their game, or whatever, at a concert, whatever. Life is so exciting for guys of that age and girls at that age that, man, sleep is not very exciting, Chad. It just isn't very exciting. And so when sleep becomes important and I can't get by on 5 or 4.5 or 6 hours of sleep anymore and continue to make progress, that is a very polarizing thing for them. They have trouble with that. Mm-hmm. Because they didn't have to worry about their sleep for the first 3 years.
Right.
And now you got to.
And I also think that's where.
Now you got to sacrifice of, well, honey, we can't go to that concert because I'll be out too late and I got to squat the next day and I'll never be able to make it. We'll have to go to another concert that's further away from my squat day or something like that. Or you move your squat day, right? There's solutions. There's plenty of solutions to all this. Mm-hmm. If you're not thinking clearly about this stimulus to recovery burden ratio, then it's very confusing. And then you want to program jump and you want to try this and you want to try that and you still make no progress. And that's where not everybody, but so many people, the majority, the vast majority get stuck and done.
And then
they have a go ahead.
I'll actually see a lot of people go the opposite direction. They're like, oh, I need to train more.
Oh, they do, yeah.
When that's the absolute worst thing they could do.
They think it's all about the gym. Mm-hmm. You said that they get the wrong idea early on that it's all about the gym. And so then, and I see guys like this and I feel so bad for them because they have a heart of a tiger, right? Mm-hmm. They are, they'll do it. They'll do it. I'll do another 10 sets. I'll obliterate my quads. I'll just work even harder. That's not the answer.
That's actually one of the reasons I keep doing my podcast and keep coaching, because I know how hard people will work, and I'm like, man, you're working so hard, but you're working on the wrong stuff. And I think I had this idea that when we're building our strength up, when we're starting, our muscles are getting bigger, they're getting stronger, our bones are probably getting more dense. But is your lymphatic system getting stronger? Is your endocrine system getting stronger? Is your pituitary in your brain growing bigger? Is your digestive system getting stronger? No, they're pretty much what they are. So you've built your muscles bigger, you built your bones denser. Now all these other things got to work harder to maintain that.
Yeah, well, the heart works harder the more mass you put on.
Yeah.
It has to pump through thousands of extra capillaries through that new muscle tissue and everything. Yeah.
It's I always use the term of a carpenter because I come from blue collar. And I'm like, when I first started banging nails with a hammer, like, yeah, the first couple of weeks, my forearms friggin' hurt like hell and they got stronger. But after a very short period of time, they got strong enough to swing that hammer all day and that was it. So you don't find a guy who's been banging nails for 20 years, his forearm's not 45 inches around. It's the same size it was.
But what if you had to constantly drive bigger nails till they got to the size of railroad spikes, and then they became as big as your forearm? The nails that you had to drive. That's what strength training is. It's not just driving more nails all day long. Mm-hmm. The nails get bigger. What you know?
Or the hammer got heavier. Bigger.
And or the hammer gets heavier every day, right? That's what's interesting, I think, to think about when we think about these strength sports, specifically powerlifting, though, where you don't have to go out. LeBron James doesn't go out every night to score more points than he did ever in his career before. Mm-hmm. He doesn't say, I gotta get more rebounds tonight than I've ever gotten ever before, every single night. Right? I don't need more assists. He just goes out to win the game.
Right.
Right? We, as powerlifters, we step on the platform, and every competition, we're asking ourselves to do more than we ever did before in our career. And it's a different sport. We're not just trying to win. We're trying to set a new PR every single time. And that's a very different, very different philosophy of sport than just I have to beat everybody in this race today. I have to cross the finish line first and I win. In powerlifting, I gotta outlift myself from the last time I did this.
Right.
And that time I had to outlift myself from the time before that. And it is this constant, like I said, it never gets easier, right?
Right.
It never gets easier. It always gets harder. This sport always gets harder.
I never thought of it that way. That's like a football player, you need to get in shape to play that amount of time. They're never going to make longer. Your games aren't going to be longer. That's interesting. Yeah. So we're always pushing the limits.
Yeah. But not just, it's our personal best too. We're always asking for the best.
Right.
And when you go into the gym, you're always asking for the best. You always want to be stronger and stronger and stronger. So if you can grasp that concept, then it's easier to accept, oh, you know what? I really do got to do a better job of recovering. Look at what I'm asking myself to do. That's almost craziness. That's almost absurdity to every time I go to a competition have to do better than I did last time. But that's what we ask. That's what we want. That's the sport. That's the nature of the sport.
And if I break that down in my head and I'm thinking right now, I'm like, okay, so I'm a human. I have this limited recovery ability, yet I'm continually asking myself to push further and further and further. So the simple logical thing is I have to optimize my recovery and equal that recovery to my expenditure.
Yeah. And I think that lends itself to I agree with you completely. That's the right attitude. But then I think we can go one step further and say, I also should optimize my training. I should not do a rep in the gym that doesn't make me better.
Completely, yeah.
I shouldn't do it because if I do a rep that doesn't make me better, I have to recover from that That takes away from that adds to my recovery burden. It takes away some of my recovery reserve, but I didn't make any progress for it. And yet I see people doing set after set, countless sets, countless exercises that absolutely aren't making them any better.
I do.
And in the percentage system, go ahead.
With myself right now, I try to ask myself, what's the minimum amount of work I can do in the gym today to stimulate growth? Because all I need to do is stimulate it. And that's hard for me because I love lifting weights and I love pushing myself. And there's times where I got to go, Chad, that's it. You're good. You're done.
Yeah. Yeah. That's maturity, and that's being committed to improvement, not committed to serving time in the gym.
Right.
So I love being in the gym too. It's a great place, but it's not where anybody grows. Nobody builds muscle in the gym. Nobody builds strength in the gym. You get torn down, you get tired, you get weaker in the gym. You build strength outside of the gym doing those other 6 things: eat and rest and sleep and rejuvenate, getting rid of stress and balancing your life. That's when strength is built, not the time you're in the gym. Nobody built an ounce of muscle under a gym roof. Never happened. Not 1 ounce of muscle.
Yeah, you're breaking it down. You're gonna get bigger and stronger when it recovers and adapts.
Yeah, that happens outside the gym.
And that's a pretty simple concept, at least in my brain. That's a pretty simple concept.
No, people can't wait to get back to the gym because they're, like you said in the beginning, they think it's all about the gym. They think it's all about lifting. They are under the impression that I go to the gym and I get strong at the gym. They're under that impression. Mm-hmm. They haven't thought it through that, well, wait a minute, I actually leave the gym tired. I go there and I'm pretty energized, but when I leave, I'm dragging. I got weaker in the gym. And they associate the gym erroneously with their strength gains. And what you said is true. It is just this place where we stimulate the gain. It's where we place the order for more strength. It's where we write out our wish list. We do these things, and that is putting in the order for strength. And then if the nutrition's there, if the rest is there, if the sleep is there, if the rejuvenation and if the recovery is there, then we get the strength. Mm-hmm. But we don't get it at the gym. It never happens at the gym. And it is really hard. And that's why people, in the first couple of years, you get the wrong impression. You do 3 exercises for chest and you learn a new one and it's super exciting. And you do the 4th exercise and you get bigger because you did a little bit more work. Now remember, you're way under. You're just a little tight. You're just using baby weights, right? You're using the chrome dumbbells, right? But you learn a new exercise and it's exciting. And then now you got 4 exercises for chest, and this is great. And then you learn of a new exercise. Oh, they have a cable crossover. I'm going to do that too, right? Because that's for this, and this is for the other, and this. I'm doing inclines for the upper chest, and I'm doing dips for the lower chest. I'm doing cables for the. Man, you could see where they get the wrong idea, because at the beginning, pretty much the more you do, the better, because you can't even push yourself. How many push-ups can a young guy do, right? He can't do many. I mean, Go in there, do maybe 15, maybe, right? So anything he does, anything more he does is better for him. More is better at that point. But it doesn't take long before more isn't better. It's just more. And then it's not only better, it's worse because of the thing that you said. He thinks he has to do even more work. Oh, I need 6 exercises for chest. That's the problem. No, I need 7. No, I need 4 sets. No, I need 5 sets. No, I need 6 sets. No, I need 10 sets. Oh, it's just all so close. It's almost right. It sounds right, but it's not right. And one mark of a mature human being on this planet is to be able to get better and better and better at determining what sounds right to what is right.
Yes.
Because they're so close, and they want to work, and they're young, and they got energy, right? And they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, but it sounds like you should do more. High volume, do more stuff. That's not going to get you there. You got to do what you're doing better. And then you got to do a minimum of stuff because you have a limited reserve to recover. Mm-hmm. Your recovery reserves are only so much for any human being. You can only sleep so many hours during the day.
I wonder.
You can't sleep all day long.
I wonder too, because I went back recently and started reading some stuff on like Arthur Miller and HIIT training and some Menser stuff. And I remember thinking, wow, I read all this stuff when I was a kid and I took away something completely different.
What's that?
Well, when I was a kid, I took away what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear high intensity training. So apparently I paid little attention to the recovery portion of it. Because when I was in high school, I trained like every day like a maniac. And I kind of got away with it because I was young. Could I have been stronger and better? Maybe, if I would have gave myself some rest. And then I've written for a couple of the big magazines, and I ended up not writing for them because I would write stuff that was different than what they had always written, and they would ask me if they could change it. And eventually I go, no, you can't change it. Like, you hired me for my knowledge. This is what I want to do. And so eventually I quit writing for them. But I remember going back and like Tom Platz was one of my favorite bodybuilder guys. Just his legs were just impressive. And so I always thought I got to train like Tom Platz. He trains like crazy. And I watched a video like a month ago. And he goes, yeah, I did squats twice a month. He's like, I couldn't do it any more than that. He goes, those took so long to recover from. Yeah. And I'm like, did they twist that in the media or did I twist it in my head when I was younger? Because how come I've never heard him say that?
Well, probably a little bit of both, right? Most of that, not all, but most of that Menser, Jones stuff, Ellington Darden, most of that stuff is still valid. Those are guys that were on the forefront of exploring this idea of not thinking about going to the gym and going, what's the most I can do, but what's the least I have to do?
Right.
What's the least I have to do so I can spend my time growing and not tearing myself down in the gym. And I was thinking just the other day about the difference between say an Arnold Schwarzenegger, and someone would look at his programs and they're never, ever, I don't think he's ever spoken. Well, who knows? The programs that you see commonly are all stuff that he did when he already had 21, 22-inch arms.
True.
And he did a lot of volume. And he did, 6, 8 exercises, right? And he trained every single day. And I see a kid perhaps looking at that and going, all right, here's this one guy saying we should train harder but not more. But then there's Arnold Schwarzenegger, and look how he trained. I'm going to train like he did. And I think to myself, wow. So this kid is thinking to himself, I don't want to train like he did when he was 18. I want to train like he did when he was in his prime. Mm-hmm. And I look at Arnold and me, and we're kind of like the same. I look at myself just like Arnold. So I think I can do everything he does. With his 22-inch arms, I want to do that too, because somehow in my twisted world, me and Arnold, we're on the same level. Like, it's just absurd, right?
Yeah.
It's absurd. What do you think you have in common with Arnold at his prime? Why don't you try to find out what Arnold did back in Austria before he came to America to get pretty well built? How did he start out? You want to start out, you're 155 pounds, and you want to do, multiple sets of multiple exercises twice a day, that's what you want to do. That's how you're going to start this journey, you think? Right? It's just absurd, but that's what you get. And no pro bodybuilder wants you to think that they're not a hard worker.
I was just going to say
they
that.
always want you to think they actually, I'm sure, said that they did more than they did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I squatted 405 for sets of 25, and then I did leg presses for 10 sets, and then I did some sissy squats, and then I did leg extensions, and then walking lunges, and they just make this shit up.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to see them in an elevated light, right? And I learned that. I remember the guy that taught me that those guys were all bullshitters, and I couldn't believe it because I read it in a magazine and it was in print. And a magazine was like a book, and my school books were textbooks, and I was supposed to believe them. So this is a magazine too. This is a young kid thinking,
yeah,
if it's in print, it's got to be true, right? And he's like, no, they don't do any of that. They don't train like that.
Yeah, I remember when I got to that level and I knew pro bodybuilders and I was writing for like Muscle and Fitness and stuff, and yeah, they're like, no, they needed a program, so I gave them a program, or they wrote one, and I went, yeah, okay, that's what I do, sure. And then, like, I think the promoter thing, because Arnold was a huge promoter of himself, always was. And I've seen where he's like, yeah, I trained for 4 hours, then I did my construction job, and then I went and did my other job. And I'm like, no, you didn't. You didn't do that.
Yeah.
But as a young kid, when you're reading it, you think it's real.
Yeah, of course you do. And speaking of Tom Platz, I remember him saying this, and I liked it. He said that when he became a young pro, he would have to go to the gym early in the morning to work out with 15 and 20 pound dumbbells. He had just become a pro. He didn't want anybody to see him training with he called, and I love this word. I love it. He said, you train the muscle with finesse. You don't have to pound it. Mm-hmm. You train it with finesse, and you really get and he's like, I couldn't do that with the heavy weights. To train with finesse. So he banged out craziness. He did that.
Yeah.
But he also in private, where people couldn't see him, he also did this finesse work, this deep concentration, and the weights were not important. The muscle was important. And I'm glad he finally started to talk about it, but that was the truth about it. But you would have never known that.
Right.
You would have always thought he was in there high on cocaine.
Yeah. And,
right?
and even when he was, from what I knew when I was younger, he wasn't doing it as often as they said.
No. Well, you can't. That's you bring up the point. So all of this gets to a good question that we sort of danced around earlier, Chad, which is, what are you in the gym for? And are you in there to actually honestly make progress? Or is there other reasons? And I used to think, foolishly, that the only reason you'd be in the gym is to make progress. But then I started to realize that's not true at all. No. There's lots of other good reasons to be in the gym. I had one guy tell me, if I didn't come to the gym, I'd kill somebody. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, I'm glad you come, right? Stress release. Some people go there because they don't want to go home to their wife. Mm-hmm. And so they finish work and they do the workout, and then they're so tired that when they get home to the wife, it's okay, right? Some people go there because the gym is an energized place with people who have energy. Mm-hmm. And it feels good to them, and they like to be around that. Some people go there for the camaraderie. Hey, I see the same people at the gym. They come at the same time I come in. I see them. I say hi. We're all doing this thing together. It's almost like a religious service.
Yep.
We all come here. We all do the same thing. We all leave. We all serve the same purpose, God, function. And we come to this church, this building that's built for this one function where we all come. We congregate here, and then we talk. And it's social. You might go there to look at girls. You might go there to be seen by people. There's all kinds of reasons other than to actually make progress. Sometimes people go there just because they're the guy at the office that goes to the gym every day.
Yep.
And they're known. That's their sort of identity. That's who they are. He goes to the gym every day. And if you go to the gym every day, you at least look good, right?
Yeah.
But they're not there for progress, right? And so the things that you and I are talking about now, they're not really important. They're important. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay, I don't know what happened there. They're not that important to everybody. They're important to athletes. They're important to competitors. They're important to people that do want to make progress. This idea of recovery burden and output in the gym and stimulation. What do I have to do to stimulate it? And then what am I going to have to pay for that later? And can I afford that?
Mm-hmm.
Can I afford to do that much in the gym? And I don't know if I've told you this before, but I think I've mentioned it enough times in my history that some people know about it, but maybe some people don't even know who I am. But when I was at my strongest, Chad, I benched every 10 days.
Okay. That makes sense to me.
I couldn't not. When I was at my very strong, I made most of my progress as a competitor benching in a 7-day cycle. I made tons of progress, got real strong doing that. But at the top end, I needed more rest, not sleep, rest between stimulation bouts. I needed to give my body time to make up and rebuild from that heavy, heavy session. And if you don't give it enough time, you plateau. I gave it another 3 days, kept getting stronger.
Right.
Yeah.
At my strongest, I was training like a heavy bench day and a heavy squat deadlift day once a week.
Yeah.
And I got all kinds of shit because I wasn't training more often. But my body couldn't handle it.
Right. It can't.
And it's interesting what you said, because when I recently I started lifting in high school, and I always said I'm lifting for sports. I'm lifting for sports. And I realized recently that I was not lifting for sports. I was lifting because the first time I did the bench press in my basement, I went, "Oh my God, this is awesome. I feel great." Like
it's great to be strong, isn't it?
I completely controlled my anger, and it was a way for me to deal with my anger. And that's what I did I always lifted because it helped keep me sane and keep me from like killing somebody.
Yeah.
And then
that's a good reason.
When I got into powerlifting and started getting better, I had a conversation with Tate, and I go, "Hey man, I'm hitting the wall. Like I can't, every 3 or 4 weeks, me and my whole team, everything just goes to shit." And he's basically like, "What do you want to do? What do you think you should do?" And I go, "It seems like we need more rest. It seems like we need to recover better."
Yeah.
And he's basically like, he goes, "Well, do you want to lift to control your anger and life, or do you want to lift to be one of the best powerlifters in the world?" And that was like a big wake up call for me, which in hindsight actually led me to working out a lot of issues. Why do I need to be in the gym every day? Why do I need to deal with life through the gym? So like I say, powerlifting helped me out, make me a better person in a lot of different ways. That was one way. So like, yeah, when I talk to a lot of people, I try to bring that up. I'm like, listen, if you want to go to the gym and that's how you control your anger and you don't want to work on it any other way, that's fine. But I need to know that, and I'll make up crazy training sessions for you. But don't get mad at me if you don't get stronger. Don't get mad at me if you don't put on up more weight.
Yeah. You don't strike me You and I have only known each other for a short period of time. And so you don't strike me as a person that has a lot of anger. So you must have worked on it either through the gym or through some other ways. But you mentioned it. You mentioned it with a frequency that lets me want to ask this question. And you don't have to answer it. But tell me about this anger. I don't see it in you now. I don't see it in your posts. I don't get that impression from you. And you and I have never met in person, but I don't get that impression from you.
I'm not.
But what about this anger?
I'm not anymore. But
Okay.
I grew up as a very angry kid. I fought a lot. I actually loved fighting. And I mean, I would just blow off the handle easily. Like it's every day I'd get mad and I'd get madder than hell at work. And it's like, I got to get to the gym. I got to get to the gym because I got to train and work this out.
Hmm.
And when I came to the realization that like, that's not going to make me a good power lifter. And I want to be a good power lifter. I don't want to be in the gym to control this. I want to be in the gym to push myself. I want to see how I can compete with the best in the world. And once I made that decision, it was like, okay, Chad, so then why do you have to be in the gym? And basically I went down this huge rabbit hole of analyzing myself and analyzing the things I've been through and trying to figure out why I was so angry all the damn time.
Did you feel like when you made the decision to say, I want to go in the gym to become a great power lifter. I don't want to go in the gym to serve this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel like you had lost a tool to deal with it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
You did. And so what tool did you find to deal with it then? If you don't mind me asking.
I mean, it took a long time. There were still a lot of times where I'd come into the gym angry. Like, it was years. But I mean, basically it was literally me like being my own psychologist and sitting down with myself. And like, I like to go on hikes and I like being in the mountains and stuff. And with that, when I had that free time to get away and stuff, I would think, why, Chad, why do you get so pissed off all the time? And I started studying and researching. And, I learned that my emotions are my responsibility and not the exterior world. If I'm angry, it's not the exterior world's fault. No one made me angry. I let myself get angry. And I have control over if I want to be angry or not. And the more I thought about it, the more I went, no, I don't want to be like, I want to be happy. Like, why the hell do I want to be angry all the time? Like, this sucks. And it was just a long process of understanding and going through my childhood and all this stuff I had bad feelings about and kind of, I tell people all the time, I go, a lot of stuff that holds us back, I think, are things that happened in our childhood. And we responded to it with a child's brain. But now we're an adult and we can go back over that situation and see it with an adult's eyes. And that simple fact of doing that completely changes you. And it changes the emotions that you have stuck inside you.
I train a couple guys. The reason I asked you that, I train a couple guys that are sort of reticent to give up their anger because they don't think that they will have what it takes without it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and so I asked that question about when you decided, hey, I want to go to the gym to be a great power lifter. Did you find that did you fear that if I do deal with my anger, I won't be as effective as I have been? Because they're literally, they like don't want to get rid of it because they're afraid. They think it's a tool that they need.
During this process, I went and got a huge Hulk tattooed on my midsection, the Incredible Hulk, because I thought, you know what? Right now, my anger is controlling me, and I want to be the master of my anger. Because I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to completely get rid of it. I think it's probably a part of me to a certain extent. But if I control it, then it's okay. So even when I was still competing, I would use that anger to get me pumped up, to get adrenaline released. But what people thought I was lifting that way, and I wasn't lifting that way. I did it to get pumped up. Then I pulled myself back and did the lift. So, and I always thought, man, if I get in that situation where I need to defend myself, I want to be able to, and kind of like you said about like with the art of war, if you go in completely on emotions and vengeance and anger, you're not going to be very good at fighting. So I still see anger as a way to get my adrenaline and attention up, but I still need to control it. You can't just have this full on rage. It's not going to be any good. And I have a lot of my competitive lifters. There's a lot of guys that I don't want them to get angry because they lift like shit.
Yeah.
And then there's some guys that
they lift better
angry.
though. That's strange. They do worse, but they still believe they're going to do better.
Mm-hmm.
Even if all the evidence points to you don't do very well when that happens.
Yeah, so
they still think that they will.
There's a lot of times where I don't, and because people would watch me, and a lot of people would actually admit that they were scared of me when I was lifting. And I'm like, I don't know what you people are looking at, because in my mind, it's not what you think it is.
I like what you said about using it to increase a state of mind, but then when it's time to actually perform, to not be in that state of anger anymore, to be able to, you said, pull it back and control it. And I think that, but that is a skill in itself. I don't know that skill, but I believe that
it was a skill that took me years to master, to be able to flip the switch and flip it back. Like when we would start wrapping my knees for the squat, I'd get really quiet and I'd go in my head and I'd find this rage and anger. Then I'd go up to the platform like an animal. But then before I lifted, I would visualize the lift. And people are like, how did you visualize the lift? You look like you're going crazy. And I go, because that's what you saw. That's not what's happening. Like I visualized it and had my focus on my technique, and I had my focus on one or two things that I may have not been doing so good in warm-ups. You know, I'm not squeezing my glutes hard enough with my root. Okay, well then that's what I'm focusing on. Like I was focusing on something during the lift. So I wasn't in like this complete rage when I was in the lift. I was only in that rage to get everything going as hard as I could before that. And I think that's the problem. I think is a lot of people see lifters like me, and then they want to go completely crazy the whole time. And it's like you have no focus. You're messing up your technique. Your energy is going everywhere. And then as soon as that lift was done, I'd flip the switch and I'm right back to just calm and mellow. And all right, when's the next lift?
Having a switch is important, and knowing where that switch is. So I don't have a lot of experience personally from the inside out with anger, but with energy I do, right? And I would like to bring my energy up for the lift and then bring it back down during between lifts, and I do that with training sessions too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the phrase that you use there, the switch, being able to switch it on, switch it off. And I have always admired that in athletes. I think the best of the best athletes, they know where the switch is. And when they need to flip the switch, they can flip it. And when that switch is no longer useful, they can flip it off.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually use tennis players. If you've ever watched any really good top level tennis, when they throw that ball up and hit, 100-mile-an-hour serve, it's on. Everybody's going full go.
Yeah.
They're just smashing that ball at each other, right? And then somebody wins a point, and then just watch them. They are instantly off. They flip the switch.
Mm-hmm.
And because they got to do it all day long. Like they got to go balls out, hitting that ball as hard as they can. And then they got to shut it back down all day long, thousands of times in a day. And so they are good at turning it on when it's necessary and then turning it right back off.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not leaking out any extra. And I think that's a good thing that you brought up there.
I think that's the kind of skill that you can train it all the time. You can train it all day long. Even as simple as if you're out on the road and somebody cuts you off. And you're like, son of a motherfucker.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Do I want to be angry right now? Is there any reason for me to elevate to this level of energy? Do I want to expend it? No, I don't. Oh, wait. So wait a minute. So then I'll flip them off and go, F you, whatever. And I'll go right back
they can't even hear you, and they don't care even if they could hear you.
Yeah. So it does. All it does is taxes your body. And if you are lifting, you think, well, I just wasted recovery that I could have used for my body to be getting stronger.
Yeah. I think that you said another thing too about controlling it, having the rage, having the Hulk, but being able to control it. I think there's been, I can't think of a really good quote right now off the top of my head, but I've heard a bunch of them. There are really good quotes about controlling the power that you have, whatever power that is. To be able to an image that I like that says this too, and it remind when you said the Hulk and controlling it, when you mentioned that the image of an elephant with a little boy sitting with a stick on top of the elephant.
Mm-hmm.
And this elephant has all this power, but the boy with the stick is telling the elephant what to do with that power. And the boy's just little, but he has executive control over all that power.
Mm-hmm.
And if you let the elephant just do what he wants, he might run the village over. But as long as you have that power under control, it can be very useful.
Yes. You just reminded me of a story. We had this horse, Rusty, when I was a kid. It was my dad's horse, and he had to have been like the stallion horse of horses. I mean, he was jealous. If my dad touched any other horses, he'd get pissed. He'd ride hard with my dad, but when you put my little sister on him, calm, just total calm, did not buck, did not bounce, went really slow. And even as a little kid, I remember watching that and just thinking, wow, that's pretty amazing that horse is that high spirited, but he can and he knows when to just calm it down. Yeah. Maybe that was one of those subliminal things that stuck in my head as I got older. I don't know.
Well, that's what it's about. And for the best of the best athletes, they recognize this, and I think that they seek to master it.
Mm-hmm.
It's super useful. And the ones that don't, sometimes they overextend themselves, sometimes they don't. They have, how about this? I'll rephrase it. When an athlete has this idea of controlling all this power and flipping the switches, I think that the evidence of that is in their consistency.
Yes.
They become a consistent competitor. Whereas athletes that haven't really mastered the on-off, sometimes they turn it on and off at just the right moment and they win. And other times they screw it all up and they tank. But athletes, I think that athletes across all sports who have done their due diligence and worked on this in themselves and learned the right moment to turn it on and to turn it off. That horse knew who was on his back.
Mm-hmm.
He knew when to turn it on and to turn it off. He could recognize the difference. Some horses can't. If they're just somebody on my back.
Right.
And they do it right sometimes, do it wrong sometimes. But a consistent athlete or an athlete that has this ability to recognize the moment for what it is. This is a moment I got to flip this switch. This is a moment I got to flip this switch. they become very consistent competitors. They're always in the hunt.
Well, I think they're the ones too where, say in powerlifting, if you miss your first 2 lifts, those are the guys that can control it and hit that third, where a lot of people will fall apart completely based on that pressure of having to get that third lift. Because I mean, I think the switch being on and off kind of goes even deeper than just the energy, but controlling your emotions.
I see energy. I see emotions as energy.
Yes,
I do.
yeah,
You know,
and they can be controlled too. Like, if I want to feel a negative emotion, or do I want to feel a positive emotion?
yeah.
I'd rather feel a positive emotion and have positive energy.
I think that takes practice as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a good coach, the coach will engineer these situations where you have to demonstrate something. The situation is engineered to see whether or not you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the only other way is to get meet experience, and you can't do a meet every weekend. Right? You can't. And so the coach has to work in these very, very tailored and manicured and real designed situations to hand them to you to see if you can work with them. And then if you don't do well, that shows the coach something, that we need to work on this. And if you do well, that gives you practice in doing well.
Mm-hmm.
But no workout, well, not no workout, but I look at every workout and I say, in this situation, can I add anything in other than the sets and reps that we have to do? Is there an opportunity for me to put in some of this other stuff that is hard to come by? And how would I do that? And how can I do that? And so I have a kind of a stock list of things that I do. And then I'm always looking for the right time to slip that in with the athlete and maybe get that feedback. And sometimes I'll just tell them, I'm like, look, we're going to keep doing this, and I'm going to keep putting on 5 pounds. And sooner or later, something's going to break. Something's going to break down in your technique.
Yeah.
And that will show us the weakest part of your technique. Right? Something will go wrong. And if it's this, but whatever goes wrong first, as we move the weight up, don't worry. Keep trying to do everything right. But whatever goes wrong, that's what we'll know is the weakest part of your technique. And it'll tell us what we should spend more time on. Mm-hmm. And I don't do that with high level athletes, of course, but just people learning at the beginning.
Right.
Because but there's other things too. I enjoy those. Sometimes I call them gut checks just because I want them to get all excited about it or something, but they're not really. They're really just ways to look at these other things and not waste a time. I don't have a lot of time with my athletes. I get a limited amount of time with them. And so if I spend all that time on mechanics or all that time on, anything, motivation, if I spend it all, I mean, that's what it gets spent on. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always trying to get more, I guess, bang for the buck, or just give them a little bit more, and also get a little information back from them about what could we be working on, where could we be going with it. And emotions are always they're always on my list of something to look at. They're always a possibility that maybe this workout would be a good thing to check into this. I just recently, 2 weeks ago, I said something that I knew would distract this guy, and sure enough, it did. And we had a big talk about it. I'm like, you can't let anything distract you. Like you can't let anything distract you. And sure enough, it did. And boy, it was a good lesson. But he didn't like it because he missed his set and everything, and he got all upset about that. I'm like, it's not about that. A year from now, you won't think about the weights you're moving now. What's important now is that you see this weakness in your overall approach to this. If I could so easily get your mind over here on this thing when you should have been right here, that's a weak spot. That's a gap. There's a big open door there, and the horses can just run out anytime. They're not going to do what we want them to do. They're going to get distracted, and you got to close that door, And it was he didn't necessarily embrace it right away, but I think he sees it now. But
I think there's over time I've had a different level of what is the basic foundation, and I'm still big on technique, but like technique was one of my biggest things. We got to get your technique right first. We got to get you to feel the muscle, to understand the muscles. And as of late, over the last couple of years, I'm getting more and more that I want them to have the right mentality. Like I want them to be able to control their brains and their emotions and their body. Because I look at all the athletes that I've known, all the top athletes I've known from strongman, bodybuilding, a few other sports guys. They all have this mentality. Like they just know they're going to be successful. And even if it doesn't work right away, they're going to figure it out. They just know that. And I think you could have the greatest diet in the world, but if you have the wrong mentality, it's not going to work. You could have the greatest training program in the world if there is one. And if you don't have the right mentality, it's not going to work. And I see a lot of people, I have clients sometimes that aren't losing as much weight as they want, and they're very pessimistic. And like one of my main goals is I need to get them to understand that how they see things and how they see themselves 24/7. It's not just, you can't just be positive in the gym. You need to be positive all day long. And the effect that that's actually going to have on them, and the effect it's going to have on how their nutrition even works. I mean, I think we've lost the concept of how much power we actually have in our own bodies.
Well, there's all kinds of research about placebos and believing things that aren't true, and usually it's in the negative, right? But if the case works in the negative, then it should be able to work reverse. And so we all know people that talk themselves out of victory. Doubts creep in, and their body is ready. You got people you bring them to a meet, and they're totally ready, and then something happens, right? And there's no good reason for it, and it certainly isn't because their body wasn't capable. It's something else. So if we know for a fact that we can let what happens in here ruin everything for us, then the opposite should be true as well.
Yes.
That we should be able to do something in here that makes things go better for us. Better than we even expected. Better than maybe we even dreamed. And it's just turning it around. And it's turning that force that everybody admits that, yeah, you can talk yourself out of a victory. But not everybody believes you can talk yourself into one. But I do. I believe that if it works one way, I should be able to pull something out of my ass sometimes and win because of the way I think.
Yes.
And you give me two equally matched competitors, and I'll take the kid who has worked harder to get to where he was. So, theoretically, this wrestler and this wrestler are at the same level today. Same strength, same skill level, same mentality. They're at the same level. all things being equal,
Mm-hmm.
except this one thing. To get to this place where they're equal, this guy didn't have to work quite as hard as this guy to get here. They're equal, but my money's going to go on the kid that had to work harder to get there. Now, if you know anything about like logic and everything, there's no reason for me to believe that, right? Because all things are equal.
Right.
They are equally skilled. They know the same moves. They are the same strength. They are the same, right? But there's something in me that has a belief that at any moment in time where these two equally matched athletes are going at it, if the one guy had to work harder to get to this point, to be there, than the other guy, that if the other guy allows one of those moments of doubt to creep in, the kid that worked his ass off to be there is going to capitalize on that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if the one kid is going to do that, but I think that if that happens, a lot of times people beat themselves. They make a small opportunity for you to capitalize. You're both doing exactly the same thing. You're doing what he's doing. There was a guy at our gym, Michael Francois. He was a pro bodybuilder. And he used to say this, or he's the guy that I credit with me hearing this. He would say, somebody asked him, he wasn't talking to me, but I listened to him. Someone asked him about what all the top pros do. And he's like, we all do the same thing. We all train the same. We all get the same diet advice. We all take the same drugs. Everything's the same. Everything. Everybody's doing everything right. There's nobody that doesn't want it as much as everybody else. It's not, well, things are equal. It's going to come down to whoever wants it more. No, that's equal too. Everybody wants it 100%. That's all equal. Where I'm going to win is when that guy cheats on his diet one day or one meal. I'm not going to cheat on mine. So everybody's right here. And the people, and I'm going to win, not because I'm going to do something better. I can't. We're all doing everything to win. But this guy, he might take a day off, and I won't. Right? And that's how I look at two equally matched people. When the one guy has worked really hard to get there, he's not going to let anything creep in. And the other guy who didn't work maybe as much, he might get that moment of doubt. When he gets that moment of doubt, boom, I'm going to turn.
Mm-hmm. See, I would think so, because I would say the guy that's worked harder has probably faced more adversity and overcome more adversity.
Okay.
And my guess would be that he's a little bit mentally stronger.
No, they're the same mental strength. Everything's equal. But he has a different history.
Mm-hmm.
He has a different history is all. They're at the same strength now, but the way that he got to that strength was not the way the other guy got to that strength. He had more adversity, right?
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So this guy is at this level of mental strength, and this guy is now here too. This guy, he's always been mentally strong, and he's only improved this much. This guy's come from way down here, and now he's also at the same level,
Mm-hmm.
but his history's different, right? You said he overcame more adversity, right?
Yeah.
He's not mentally stronger, but his history is different. So they came to the same point, but they didn't go there the same way. And if either of them makes a little mistake, maybe the guy who I'm going to put it in this term. The guy that worked harder to get to the same exact spot is not in any different spot, but if he wins, he's going to appreciate it more.
Yes, I would agree with that too.
That's the way I look at it, because I've trained some athletes that were stellar physical specimens, and they didn't work very hard to be at the top of their game.
Mm-hmm.
And they just didn't work very hard. And I got the sense that if they lost, or if they didn't do their very best, it wouldn't bother them too much. They had this surplus of natural talent. And these other kids that I saw get to that same level and step on the field at the same time, they oh my God, they overcame adversity, like you said. They worked harder. Now they're at the same level, right? They have the same skills. All things are equal now, but they weren't always.
Right.
And there's a history there. And maybe I'm wrong about this, but I feel, and it's not a good way to go about thinking, is feeling, but I feel that the kid that worked more wants to be there more. He is more appreciative of where he is, and he's least likely, in my opinion, to make a mistake and to let something slip through his hands. The guy that has always been, and I'm thinking of a certain person I know that I trained who became a top NFL player. He's in the Hall of Fame, and he did not work very hard for us at Ohio State. He was not a hard worker. He was a tremendously gifted athlete. And he got to the NFL, and all of a sudden, now he's as gifted as everybody else. Mm-hmm. And he almost lost his spot on the team. And he's like, holy hell, what do I do? Now, he's a rare individual because he decided to learn how to work hard. He had never worked hard before. He was always a half step ahead of everybody. He was better than everybody. High school, college, I mean, he was. Now he's in the NFL, and he's about the same as everybody else. But he did a job of, I think all five have come up to see me now. This is the last one. All five came to say hi. They all look the same. He did something that most people don't do, is he goes, well, I don't want to wash out. I want to be better, like I used to be. And he had no work ethic when he was with us at Ohio State. He didn't want to work. It was like pulling teeth to get him through a workout. He always tried to shortchange it. He always tried to, do the minimum, right? Or less if he could. Yeah. And then he finds himself equal with everybody else, but he does something different. He learns how to work hard out of nowhere. He didn't have a good work ethic. I can remember, and I've heard him talk. He used to come back and talk to the guys. He didn't know what he was going to do. He got depressed, right? He's going to wash out. And then he starts to work hard. And then he takes hard work and his natural talent, and he becomes all pro.
Yeah.
And now he's in the Hall of Fame and all that. I mean, not in the Hall of Fame. He's not in the Hall of Fame. I misspoke. He became an all-pro. And he might get into the Hall of Fame.
I think that's because, like, me coming up in powerlifting, I was never this great athlete. I was never super strong. I worked hard and I did well. And then when I finally found powerlifting and started coming up in powerlifting, there's a lot of times where I beat a lot of guys that were stronger than me. But their technique sucked. They couldn't compete. They didn't know how to compete.
Right.
And I think that took me a lot further, being willing to work, being willing to learn, being willing to be wrong and then fix it. I think there's a lot of guys, and I think even in powerlifting, you'll see a lot of guys that'll get to kind of a mid-level pretty easy. And then it's like you just never hear from them again. Because it was easy to get there, and all of a sudden they got to work, and now they don't want to work.
Yeah. So I think the people that work harder to get to a level, even when they're faced with an equally matched task, I think that they have an advantage through their history, not through their skills, not through their abilities. not through their strengths and weaknesses, but through their history, that if and when, at any moment in that contest, there's a bobble by the other person, they're going to pounce on it. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the other direction, a guy who hasn't worked hard isn't going to be looking for any tiny little bobble on his opponents. And he might let a few slip by, which could have meant the difference.
Right.
Like at the top level, I forget across sports, but there's people that have worked this out. The difference between first and second place is percentages or fractions of percentage.
Right.
It's not like 10% or 5%. It's like a percent or a fraction of a percent at the very top level. So those little moments of doubt in the other person's eyes, if you can see that, and if you worked hard to get where you are, you're going to be looking for that. Whereas if you didn't work that hard for where you are, you might not be looking for it. Mm-hmm. And so that's why my money is on the kid that gets to the same level, that had to work and do all that stuff, than the kid that is at the same level. You know, it's even odds. But I think that our what we've been through is it can be useful. And so instead of lamenting our misfortune and all the things that we had to overcome, I think that we could look at that in a different way. Like, thank God that I had to do all that stuff to get to where I got to, because I won't let if that guy has a glimmer of doubt in his eye, I'm going to pounce on it, because that's how I'm going to beat him. Because me and him are the same.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for him. I'm not going to screw up. I'm waiting for him to give me that one moment where I can do it.
Well,
where I can pull ahead.
Do you think that the person who has had to work harder and work through more has developed a better mentality in general than the other person?
I think oftentimes, yes. So going away from this all things are equal business, I think that generally people that have had a harder time getting there do have a stronger mentality, a way stronger mentality. Yeah.
And I think
so moving away from that all things are equal example, in the real world, people that ride their talent to the top versus people that find a way to work their way to the top, I think they have a huge advantage, Chad. A huge advantage.
So, I mean, you were definitely one of the greatest bench pressers of your time, and you competed with tons and tons of the other great bench pressers. If you were to put one key thing, if there is one key thing that most of them have in common, what would you say that is?
Well, let's see. That's a good question. I've not thought about it. I don't want to answer too quickly. One thing that we all had in common.
Looks like we're going to have to go ahead and end the podcast right here. We're going to have to wait to get JM's answer on that last question until next time. We had a little technical difficulty, but I really, really want to thank JM for being on. I love having him on as a guest. He always gives me so much stuff to think about, and I think he just has a great perspective on training and everything, and he's more than welcome to be on whenever he wants. So I do want you guys to run over to his YouTube channel, which is JM number 7th level, so JM 7th level. He has a lot of great stuff up on his YouTube channel. Go to his Instagram, which is J.M.Blakely, Blakely, and he does a bunch of great posts, bunch of thoughtful stuff to get your brain going. And I thank you guys for listening. You can go to Courage Barbell YouTube channel. You can go to my Instagram, which is just Chad Ikes, and check out all the other podcasts we have on here, which if you're listening to this, I guess it doesn't matter, but Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and everything else. Until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks for listening to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast. For more information, please visit CourageBarbell.com. Until next time.